One of the biggest features on Dorgar is of course his wings, and these we've actually started painting already because remember we've done all the black parts of the skin, and well, this goes right up onto the wings as well. So what we need to do now is paint the membranes, and for these the first colour you're going to need is Rakarth Flesh. Now I'm going to be using my medium base brush to begin with for this, but it's a good idea to have a large base brush on hand as well, and what you need to do is get your paint on your palette and thin it down with water as usual so it's nice and smooth. And then once you're ready, we just need to start applying this to the membranes. Now, be sure to be as careful as possible as you do this, because we do want to avoid all those black parts that we've started already. So just take your time painting in these areas here. And as you can see, I'm just being really careful as I get close to that black there like that. So use this smaller brush to work your way around the black parts, and then as you get towards the more open areas, such as in the middle here, you can switch to your large base brush instead. And you will need to apply 2 thin coats of this colour to build up to a nice strong finish. And well, don't forget to do the back of the wings as well. Once you've finished building up that base coat to a nice strong finish, the next thing to do is to begin adding some shade to the membranes. Now I'm actually going to be applying 2 coats of shade because, well, the first one, I want to dilute it because I don't want the shade to be too strong on the membranes. The reason is I don't want to over-exaggerate the detail on it and make the little cuts and things appear too sharp on it, you see. So what I'm going to do is mix Agrax Earth Shade with Lamia Medium. Now the reason I'm using Lamia Medium for this is because it allows me to dilute paints without changing their properties. So when the shade dries, it'll still be nice and smooth. If I used water on the other hand in this kind of quantity, then it will dry sort of scratchy, and I want to keep it nice and smooth as it's, well, once it's dry. So I'm going to be using my medium shade brush for this, and what you need to do is build up a good puddle of this on your palette. So I'm going to start out by building that up with the Agrax Earth Shade. And there we go. And then, very important, make sure you wash your brush before you get any medium. It's very easy to contaminate it with colour, and well, you need to keep it clear really to get the best use out of it. So I'm going to build up a puddle next to it. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. There we are, about half and half, and then mix them together there like that. And get a good amount loaded on your brush, and all you need to do is start painting this onto the membrane. And I'm going to start on the inside of this wing here. And you just need to paint it onto the whole area. It doesn't matter so much if you get a little bit on the black. It really just matters if you get it nice and even on the cream colour around here. Now you want this to dry as evenly as possible. So what I recommend you do is paint one membrane or one side of the wing at a time. So all of this, then let it completely dry. And as it's drying, just lie the model flat on its back so that all the shade isn't starting to run towards the bottom of the wing, because you want a nice even distribution across the entire area. Once that mix is completely dry on all the segments of the wings, the next thing to do is to, well, apply another shade. It's still Agrax Earth Shade we're going to be using, but this time I'm not going to dilute it. I want it to be much more focused this time, so I'm going to be using my medium layer brush to apply this, and I'm going to use my palette as usual to help me control exactly how much is on the brush. You want to get a fairly good tip on there, and what you're looking to do is to paint this into all the parts where the Rakarth Flesh parts of the wing membranes meet the black. So for example, just along here, I'm going to paint it into this recess there like that. Now it doesn't matter if you get much of this onto the actual wing membranes themselves, just try and keep it as focused as you can there like that. And well, it doesn't matter at all if you get any on the black because you can't really see it. So just take your time working all the way around the wings, doing this just to give them a bit more definition. Once you've finished applying that Agrax Earth Shade, we're ready to start brightening those membranes back up again. And for this, we're going to be going back to Rakarth Flesh first of all, and we're going to be applying it as a dry brush this time. So I'm using my small dry brush, and what I'm looking to do here is to build up the colour softly, like we did on Dorgar's body. So I'm going to be using my tissue once again to get the paint ready, and the trick here is to apply this in moderation. So it's always a good idea to get less paint on than you think you're going to need, because you can always add more if you need to, but it's harder to take it away again. And what you're looking to do is to just pick a segment on the wings, one at a time, and just very lightly start running your brush across this so that you get a nice soft highlight starting to build up. And you can see it's just starting to happen in the middle there. You don't have to go all the way to the edges. In fact, you want to avoid the black and leave the shade still showing in those corners down there. But you can see just by being neat and gentle with this, I'm getting that colour building up nicely. And just really take your time as you get towards the top of the wings here. Just be really careful not to get the colour on the black. Once you've finished applying that dry brush, the next thing to do is, well, another dry brush really. I'm going to be using Rack White this time, and I'm going to be applying it in, well, the same way as what we've just done. So I'm still using my small dry brush, get some on the brush and use your tissue to work it in amongst the bristles. And the key here is, once again, to apply a very small amount at once and gradually build up that colour until you're happy with the final result. So get rid of most of it on your tissue, and then pick a segment to begin with. I'm going to start on this wing once again, and then very lightly just start running your brush across it there, just to let that lighter colour pick out that texture there like that. And as before, do both sides of the wings in exactly the same way. And there we are, we've now finished dry brushing the wing membranes and they're looking great. But if you want, you can go a step further by adding some darker coloration towards the tips of the wings, like you can see on the box. And a great way of doing this is actually quite an unusual method. We need Agrax Earthshade for this, and I'm going to apply it with my small dry brush, which is something that's a bit unusual and a bit bizarre. But what I'm looking to do here is to stipple this shade onto the wings. So use your palette as usual to control exactly how much is on your brush, and you really don't need very much for this. It's best to build it up gradually. And when you're ready, all you do is pick a section of the wing. I'm going to start around the back here once again. And all you do is start stippling this towards the end of the wing there like that. And you're looking just to gradually build up the coloration and make it a little bit darker down there towards the end. And you want to keep it quite random so it gets quite a natural effect. But on each segment, only go the same sort of distance in. So to about there, I'm going to be doing the same on each one. And once you've done this, let it dry completely before we add the next stage. Once the Agrax Earthshade is completely dry, the next thing to do is, well, the same thing again. So same brush and same colour, still Agrax Earthshade, and I'm going to stipple it once again towards the end of the wings. But this time I'm focusing it closer to the actual end. So this way I'm getting a darker colour as we get further out. So what you need to do now is carry on doing this on each of the wings, and if you want the colour to get darker, then let this coat dry, then apply a third in exactly the same way. It's really up to you how dark you go with this. And there we go. Once the shade is completely dry, the wings are complete. And we can move on now to the next detail, which is going to be to paint the hair that's scattered around Dorgar's body. Now for this, we're going to be using 4 colours. We'll begin with a base coat of Mechanica Standard Grey, and then we'll shade it with Agrax Earthshade. Once that shade's completely dry, we'll highlight using Storm Vermin Fur. Then if you want to, you can do a second highlight for extra sharpness in the details with Karak Stone. But starting out with our base coat of Mechanica Standard Grey, I'm using my medium base brush for this because these areas are quite large. And as usual, I'm going to use the palette to thin my paint down so it's flowing nice and smoothly. And when you're ready, all you've got to do is find the parts of hair, and I do recommend you check out the box art to guide you through whereabouts they are. We've got this quite large area on the back here, and all you need to do is start base coating it with this colour, just being neat when you get close to the base of the hair so you don't get this colour on any of the details. And you will need to apply 2 thin coats as well. With that base coat applied, the next thing to do is to add some Agrax Earthshade using your medium shade brush, and this is to be painted all over the hair. Now be as neat as you can when you get to the base of it and you meet to the colours, but getting a small amount, such as on there on the black, is fine. It won't really show up once it's dry. Once the shade's completely dry, the next thing to do is to highlight the hair using Storm Vermin Fur. I'm using my small layer brush, and what I'm looking to do is to paint some lines following the very top parts of the hair. So for example, this line is running down the side there like that. So just take your time picking all of these parts out and be as neat as you possibly can. And finally, finish the hair off with a fine highlight of Karak Stone. And for this, you just need to paint a line from about halfway down the hair all the way down to the end for each one. And once you've finished applying that highlight, all of the hair is complete. And now we've actually painted a massive amount of Dorgar, and we're ready to move on to the next stage, which is where we're going to really start adding lots of colour to the miniature. Because the next thing to do is to paint the 3 heads that represent 3 of the Chaos Gods.